What is up, fellow sickos and thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Valley coming at you with another solo podcast, a podcast I wanted to record for just a minute, but between fireworks and puppy duty that comes with the fireworks, couldn't carve out time at night. Didn't want to do it during the day because it's going to become so dated. We're doing it during the day on a Saturday anyway. I've got triple screens up for anyone who cares. I got I guess 4 screens if you count my 2 phones. The other laptop here where I have notes, cap stuff, and about signings we'll get to. I'm going to go through what I think is every NBA team's biggest need that they still need to address now that we're done with this first sort of wave of free agency. As I'm recording this, it's the 6th. The moratorium will lift shortly. I think I'm 8 minutes out of that happening. So we have some more deals that will become official. If anything, breaking news, we're going to cover enough teams here, obviously. I'm going to try and make it super quick pace. Maybe an hour for all 30 teams would be great. But again, going to go through all those. Very quickly, just subscribe if you haven't already. Getting close to 5K subscribers on YouTube. Continue to flood the comments. I like seeing people have discussions. I've been responding to some of them. It seems like it helps the algorithm a little bit for us as well. Flood the comments of our shorts too. They're not always at the end of this podcast anymore. So go there, flood the comments, like, share, all the 9. Appreciate all of you guys, and subscribe, of course, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. All the support continues to be very much appreciated. But look, let's just hop to it. And like I said, we'll use some teams might be longer. And if there's any signings we missed, because we want to talk about every signing, I will fold those into, which is why partly I have another screen up here, because I have unbolded the signings I haven't covered for each team yet insofar as they've made them. And we're going to go, look, it's a little dangerous. And I thought about going reverse, but now that I'm doing it myself, this isn't the time to go reverse here. So we're going to begin with the Atlanta Hawks. Their biggest need, no move, since we might still be waiting on them to do stuff since we last talked. It feels like they still need two-way wings just because Zachary Risacher is really young. We don't know what he's going to look like at the NBA level. Dyson Daniels is very defense oriented, even though I kind of like his passing field there. They do have DeAndre Hunter, but he's like 1.25 way, where it's like there's going to be days where, oh, look how dynamic he is, or plug and play on offense. I know he's defending quite well, but there's going to be days where it's not. So he's not quite, I wouldn't call him one-dimensional. He's got the body, he can still stack up. But they also kind of need, is the plan at this point just to have, are you going to give a lot of backup point guard reps to Dyson Daniels or Kobe Buffkin? I don't hate, and of course Bogdanovich is here. I actually don't hate that idea of okay, let's see what we have in Kobe Buffkin and let's give Dyson Daniels, let's surround him with shooting. Maybe those are the minutes where you downsize with, because if theoretically you'll be big all the other positions, do you go with a Okongwu or Nance or Jalen Johnson as 2 of those guys as your front courts for better spacing than Capella? I don't hate it, but I'd probably like to see them get another backup type of point guard. If they're not going to go that route, though, they need two-way wings. I just don't see them expending the assets necessary to go out and get those two-way wings. The Boston Celtics, since we last spoke, they did re-sign Xavier Tillman, 2 years, $4.8 million. I think that was good. Just a different type of big man look for them. And he can hold up, I think, better than people realize on switches. They still feel like, not that they're shallow at the 5. You have Horford and Cornette and Tillman. And that's probably fine for bigs. And then the Porzingis injury sort of looms. And you have Neemias Queta is coming back as well. But it's okay, if Al Horford gets injured, things feel like they could get touch and go. I don't know what else you would expect them to do. When you do look at this team, it's kind of, what do they actually need? Because their top, you could trust their top 7 guys. You want to throw Sam Hauser in there, top 8, if you're throwing Peyton Pritchard. They don't have a hole. I would say maybe they could use a different type of reserve wing on this roster. Maybe someone who could shimmy between the 2, 3, or 4. Justin Holiday would be interesting. You have to look, and you run roster spot issues here, of course. They're only working with minimums. If you want a different type of backup playmaker for them, I would kind of get it. But just between Derek White and Drew Holiday and Jason Tatum and Peyton Pritchard, and of course, even Jalen, you could just stagger minutes differently. You can run some stuff through Al Horford. And I think I might be overcompensating for focusing too much on saying that they need this additional playmaking. So kind of just another combo wing forward type, because look, you have White and Brown and Tatum, and I guess you want to throw Holiday in there, but that's sort of it. And so someone outside the starting lineup who's not Sam Hauser that can maybe fill that role a little bit better defensively. But this team is just, the Celtics are the quintessential no notes team. Aside from just health, I don't know what you can actually, what concern are we going to manufacture here? So let's not manufacture anything. Let's just keep it moving. The Brooklyn Nets, you talk about a team, they're all over the place. I kind of bandied about the idea, like they need, I want to see them have like a floor general of the future to monitor. I mean, they need anything of the future because who's their primary building block right now? They don't have one. And so if you want to have that be the need, but just like having Ben Simmons, having Dennis Schroeder, I know you have Cam Thomas is probably him or Nick Claxton, the closest they have to a building block, but those two are not building block type of people. If you end up moving a Cam Johnson or Dorian Finney-Smith, seeing if you can get sort of a younger point guard type feels like the way to go to this team. That's someone who could start organizing your offense. Again, having Ben Simmons, if he's healthy, or Dennis Schroeder in the interim, those guys are not going to be long for Brooklyn anyway. And so they just need a talent infusion, younger talent, take the flyer. If you want them in the wings, combo forwards, not a big, like I'm fine with, I'm interested in, I'm still interested in Noah Clowney, full disclosure. Day'Ron Sharpe, like kind of nice physical, some brute force there. And then you have Nick Claxton. So I think that's the route for them to go there for sure. The Charlotte Hornets, they still no moves. Again, I'll go through them if there's any moves that we have not covered yet. We'll get into a little detail with them. They're kind of in the talent acquisition mode type deal. It still kind of feels like, do they need the guy that's going to just play next to LaMelo Ball long term? And it's not going to be, is it Trey Mann? It's definitely not going to be Reggie Jackson. I do kind of like their wing setup now. When you look at having TJ Salon and Brandon Miller, I think that's a good start. You also still have Cody Martin on this team. So like and we don't know what's going to happen with Miles Bridges as of this moment, of course. So they could use some wing upgrades in theory if you're looking for a veteran presence, but it's like, if that's a 2-3, do you think it's Josh Green? That's fine. I tend to be a little bit lower on Josh Green than most. I like him better in the non-LaMelo minutes, to be honest with everybody. But if they could, I guess just like, I'll call it wing shooting. Just they do have Miller, they have LaMelo, they have Josh Green can hit threes, Vasilije Micic. So you do have guys who can do that. Maybe if you want them to swing for the fences, I think you look at it and try to identify it and say, okay, they do have Salon. And so if you want to evaluate him in the larger context, okay, the 4 is set. And if you don't trust Miles Bridges, which totally fair. So just like another 2-3 that spaces the floor, I think would be good. You could make a case that would be better to have some backup point guards here. Again, Trey Mann being there, he's got some wiggle to him. And then, of course, Reggie Jackson is just like a good enough steward probably. And then again, they still have Micic on this roster. So I'm going to settle on that. Another team that's sort of in transition though. So you could come up with a ton of different ones. The Bulls, I mean, what don't they need to make sure that they duck the tax and any DeMar DeRozan sign and trade? I guess like they still kind of could use shooting. They have, if Zach LaVine's going to be moved, it seems like they're trying to move Lonzo Ball. You did just trade for Josh Giddey. I think that's sort of the logic behind, okay, we brought in Jalen Smith here. That gives you kind of another guy, him and Vooch to space the floor. I think if you want to get super generalist, we'll just get future first round picks and just continue to lean into sort of the bottom. It does seem like they're taking a more gradual approach, but you kind of just need indiscriminate shooting across the 2, 3, and 4. And I would probably shooting with size, like real wing size, is probably the way to go because you do have Kobe White, you do have Ayo Dosunmu on this team. And again, for now, you have Zach LaVine and Lonzo Ball, who I hope is healthy enough to watch this season. You brought back Patrick Williams, but just sort of like, Javon Carter is on the smaller end too. So just like Kobe White, and Dosunmu was kind of a wing, has good size, can defend up, but just like wing, I think just go wing shooting in volume, which, spoiler alert, I guess that's going to fall into the category for a lot of these teams. Every team couldn't we have someone who plays the 2, the 3, and the 4 then just shoots threes? That'd be great. But that's probably their biggest need. It's tough to really boil it down for them though, until you understand what direction they're actually headed in. And it does seem again that they're maybe not a full tilt rebuild, but just based off the rumors about, will they sign and trade DeMar DeRozan to the Sacramento Kings or maybe even the San Antonio Spurs. So it does seem like they're headed in that direction, but until they pick it, not to be confused with Jalen Pickett, but until they actually pick that direction, it's like kind of tough to identify the needs. And as of right now, I guess you could say because you paid Patrick Williams and you just have like, you're kind of fine in the backcourt of Giddey and Kobe White and Dosunmu if you want to evaluate those guys against the future. It's still, you could say, well, let's get like an actual center. If you wanted to get like a center of the future in there, you can go with that because they don't really have that on the roster. But any way you want to slice it with that. And could you get someone who fills either of those roles that I just talked about in a DeMar DeRozan sign and trade or as part of a Zach LaVine trade? Honestly, don't know. Certainly not going to get that as part of Lonzo Ball trade because I don't think he has a ton of value around the league right now. Or for that matter, does Zach LaVine. Next team up, the Cleveland Cavaliers. So since we last spoke, Donovan Mitchell agreed to an extension, 3 years, about $150.3 million, one fewer year than he could have signed for. But now, if you're Cleveland, like you've added 2 seasons, so this season, the following season, to say, okay, we have this, we're not going to be under pressure to move him. And then he'll have another guaranteed year before free agency or the option to get to free agency. But like that could be if you haven't won yet, or if you haven't progressed, or you're looking to, the roster got so expensive with Mobley on a new deal, maybe Allen on a new deal. You bought yourself 2 years here with this 3-year extension being tacked on to it's a 2+1 being tacked onto the year that's already there. So you've given yourself 2 more years, I would say, of just not, worry free, but that he can be here for 2 years. There's not going to be pressure to move him. You can see what the work that Kenny Atkinson does with this core 4. I think that's, they could have hoped for the 4-year extension that would have bought them even like 3 years with this, but to just get that commitment from Donovan Mitchell is a very big deal for this team. And I think it reiterates why organizations that might not be on a player's list or be in the primary running go out there and make the move if you think you're closer, you think it makes a difference, because these guys might stick around. So that was kind of cool to see. In terms of biggest need, I mean, it's kind of the same. It's you want more, like, I guess, a two-way wing, someone who could play in the playoffs, maybe log some time at the 4, can defend maybe some of the bigger wing assignments where that's not Isaac Okoro's strength, who, as this recording still remains unsigned, by the way, in restricted free agency. They would be an interesting Dorian Finney-Smith team, I think, and they should be able, just between George Niang's salary, they could cobble together enough to get there. I just don't know in terms of draft equity, what is Brooklyn going to want for that player? And so you go out and you draft Jalen Tyson. Is that enough? Is like kind of to sweeten that package? But that's sort of the need, because we know that they're going to heavily stagger, all 4 of their top players, where you're going to see different combinations between the 2 guards and the 2 bigs. But we know that they're probably going to aggressively stagger Jared Allen or Evan Mobley, unless Evan Mobley just comes in, he's shooting, a bunch above the break threes and hitting them at a 35, 36% clip or whatever. That's going to remain their biggest need. Next up, the Dallas Mavericks, who turns out I'm a lot higher on their offseason than a lot of people who don't think they've improved by that much. Maybe those people really like Josh Green or Tim Hardaway Jr. They probably could use like another point of attack defensive option, just because I believe in Dante Exum, and even just having watched Quentin Grimes for the first, the 2 seasons of his career before things went sideways this past year, that's actually a role that he could fill while spacing the floor and not needing the ball. The fact that Detroit gave him up in that Tim Hardaway dump, where they only got them seconds, that was bizarre. So is there something there that's medically a red flag, or behaviorally or functionally? Like, what is it about that organization that was out on him, and the Knicks even eventually moving on from him? But I do think that they can reasonably, like Derrick Jones Jr. gave you flexibility and pop that, no, you're not going to replace with Dante Exum. You're not going to replace it with Quentin Grimes, but you do have options there. They're not barren of this. And Najee Marshall, I do think, can hold up against, they're probably more change of pace, smaller players, like a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the name I mentioned. So if you need someone to go, but I think he could probably do well against a Devin Booker type or a Bradley Beal type. If you have more of these just like explosive type guys, or really just super quick twitch, that might be where he runs into some issues. I just think they could approximate it enough. At the same time, there's no other need. You could look and say, all right, do you want to see kind of a different type of 3, another type of wing in there? And I mean, I guess that'd be fair, but Najee Marshall can spend time at the 3 or the 4. PG Washington, you can move him around. But I think it's maybe another point of attack option. I don't know that they need to close games. That's also going to be a very tough thing to fill at this point in the offseason. I mean, did they want a reunion with Dennis Smith Jr.? I don't know. I was about to say Dennis Jones Jr. That would have been super weird. That's not a real player, in case anyone was wondering. So and you're kind of looking at the options. I have wondered, just Markelle Fultz is still floating around out there. My guess is maybe just Orlando is going to re-sign him at this point, because they're just bringing all their normal guys back apparently. But that would be, if they're going to address something, I think this team is better. They do have Klay Thompson on the wings now, by the way. And if you can figure out, if Najee has to cover some of the tougher wing coverages, and then Klay gets to shift on to just maybe glorified 4s at that point, I don't know if their defense will be as good as it was last season, but I think their offense is a lot better. And I really don't think, if there is a drop off defensively, that you're going to see it. And if you wind up with a Markelle Fultz as just an option floating around out here, I mean, good God, they're going to have a case to be favorites over OKC at that point. And by the way, it takes a lot for me to put anyone in the same class as OKC. Denver they have not made any other moves since we talked about the Klay Thompson signing with Dallas, by the way, in case anyone wants to go back and listen to that podcast. So I mean, I'm like, what is their biggest need? I would probably say you could like a veteran backup 5 or a veteran backup 1, or I think you probably need like the KCP replacement, or just like, here's the issue. And there are a lot of Nuggets fans who agreed with what I said about the Nuggets on the last podcast. Like, I understand this idea that Christian Brown will come in and be as good or better defensively than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I also understand that there are real second apron challenges here. I think when you really start to dig into the frozen picks and how long, if you're in the second apron for a full season, your pick becomes frozen. And if you do it again, it's going to be moved to the bottom of the draft. And then to get out of it, you're talking about like being out of it in, I think, 3 of 4 years or whatever it is. Those are real challenges. My issue with the KCP thing, and I promise I won't spend a shit ton of time on this, is that if you really wanted to, you could have ducked the second apron, with him. They're like $15 million away from it right now. You add KCP's $22 million or whatever it starts in year 1 into the fold, your Zeke Naji salary dump away. And we talked about that deal when it was initially signed last year and said, well, it's good that you have the sort of matching salary on the books if you need to make a trade, but that's almost turned into a toxic deal because he hasn't played, and they went out 4 years for some reason, which was, very lengthy. I'm sure we mentioned it at the time. That is my primary issue here, is that I'm team, if there's a way to do it, and there was a clear path to do it, it might have cost you some draft equity, but I think you probably could have done it without giving up seconds. But like, you're trying to figure out, and Zach will phrase this way, you have to figure out the backup to the backup minutes now. Okay, so Christian Brown comes in, replaces what KCP is doing. Now you need someone to replace like the Christian Brown type reserve minutes. Do you think that's Julian Strother? Are we going to see a lot more Hunter Tyson? There also seems like this might have been the product of a disconnect between the coaching staff and the front office, just the way that, Justin Holiday's not back at this moment, and the way that he was played in favor of Peyton Watson during that Minnesota Timberwolves series. Is that something that Calvin Booth would not have wanted to see, no matter how bad Peyton Watson was playing? I just think for this year, you continue to kick the can. Yeah, you have to reconcile it when Aaron Gordon's on his next deal and Jamal Murray, his presumed extension, kicks in. Okay, fine. Deal with it then. So that's where I ended up with. When you're citing a need, it's, I guess just a veteran backup 5. Like, you have Najee and you have Jordan and you have Deron Holmes now. I think it's probably, I'm going to go with shooting. You need to go another wing type of shooter, but just like, you were a low volume 3-point shooting team, and that's a tough math to win, even if you have Nikola Jokic on your squad. So you kind of need like someone in the vein of a 2, 3, 4 who has more experience. It's like, maybe that would be a Justin Holiday at this point, if we're talking just minimum options. Is there anyone that you could get as part of a Zeke Naji trade? Do you take a flyer on, like, has Sadiq Bey fallen down into the minimum territory? Do you take a stab at Jay Crowder? I just feel like they need an extra body there. I don't expect them to play at this point because of how invested in the youth they are. It's slim pickings at this point in free agency. Joe Ingles would have been fantastic, by the way, but he's ended up, he's not going to end up going there. I thought that was a great addition by Minnesota to get him, which we'll probably get to. So just like, do you want to see them take a look at Dario Saric? It's like some of a backup 5 there. They just need another veteran in the rotation to me, in case there are nights where the younger guys aren't giving you enough, or you need to sort of pivot. I'm not even, any of the names I listed, you can't guarantee me that they're going to play over X or should. And maybe that's what Calvin Booth is doing, because he wants to take all the other alternatives out of Michael Malone's clip, which he's basically effectively done. So like, if Gordon Hayward's willing to sign for the minimum, that'd be an interesting sort of gamble for them. Not really going to help their 3-point volume or defense though, but I guess from just a pure talent play, would he even be willing to do that though? Just because he clearly wants these youngsters to develop. Our next team here is going to be someone's Detroit Pistons. I'm not going to take ownership of them. They just added, that's one of the things we missed on them, is they signed Malik Beasley to a 1-year, $6 million contract right before I hopped on this podcast. I think just continuing to load up on shooting, I totally get it. And now you have Tobias Harris, you have Malik Beasley, you have Tim Hardaway Jr. So those are guys who can effectively space them. You have Marcus Sasser too, by the way. So when you have, a non-spacing 5 in Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart's here, they've yet to re-sign Simone Fontecchio, and that's probably their biggest need, is like, let's make sure he comes back. With our Sar Thompson and Rob Holland and how shaky Jaden Ivey's been, you just can't have too much shooting on this team. And so I think you've gotten to a point now where you could play, if you really structure it, Stewart at the 5, like you can get to some either 5-out or 4-out combinations that make like literal actual sense. And so I like that from them. I'd probably continue to load up on shooting. I think what they maybe could need adds, a bunch of stuff, but could there be like a better way to get some floor spacing 5 minutes? At this point in free agency, you're not just going to go out there like Daniel Tice is not like, okay, whatever, the Daniel Tice of like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. So it'd have to be done via trade. I think it might be more realistic. Can we get some like the idea they had with Monte Morris that didn't pan out? Whereas like, do we have sort of veteran floor general, an alternative to Jaden Ivey, an alternative to Cade Cunningham to lead some of those minutes? Again, you're looking in free agency and like Fultz isn't a good enough shooter, I don't think. Is Dinwiddie going to want to go back to Denver? I mean, did you just want Tyus Jones on this roster because you can afford him and it doesn't seem like any other team is all that interested? Is that something you're addressing via trade? But that seems like what they could still I think that's what they need the most, is just kind of that alternative there. I don't really like I get the investing the minute equity and like an Ausar Thompson can do some stuff. Maybe we see him as like some primary playmaker minutes around shooting, but I'd kind of like to see them get just more of a veteran presence there. Again, the idea of Monte Morris, which I thought made a lot of sense for them. The next team we have up is going to be, and we have some stuff to talk about them, I believe, the Golden State Warriors. So since we last talked, Kyle Anderson signed a 3-year, $27 million deal in a sign and trade. They also got Buddy Hield via a sign and trade for Dallas's 2031 second round pick. They guaranteed him 2 years and $18 million. Basically, it's the $3 million partial guarantee in year 3, so a guaranteed total of 21, and it goes out to an unguaranteed year 4. So that's a very team friendly contract for the Dubs. And the fact, look, you basically turned Chris Paul and Klay Thompson into DeAnthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, and Buddy Hield, but even more so, like to turn Klay Thompson's departure and that traded player exception into Buddy Hield and Kyle Anderson, I think is nice work. And then even with like this team now, they're really interesting defensively. When you look at having Kyle Anderson and Melton, adding that to the fold, if Gary Payton II is healthy, still have Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga, maybe Andrew Wiggins has a bounce back year here. They're in an interesting spot. And Buddy Hield shooting, of course, that'll be important. Very interesting to see how they flesh out this rotation, where it still feels like they have a lot of players who need to be on the floor, even if they don't have that second A-lister beyond Steph. And that's still their biggest need. I know they've been linked to Larry Markin, and I think he would help. I thought a little bit about, do they need more of a backup playmaker? But just between Kyle Anderson, D'Anthony Melton, having Draymond Green and Steph, I think you eke out just enough here. It might be a need, but I don't know that it needs to be top of mind. They just needed another reliable person who can generate their own shot. And that's not on the roster right now. You really have to believe in Andrew, like even the 2022 version of Andrew Wiggins, that was not necessarily his, but it just wasn't his strong suit. I don't need to use the necessarily qualifier. I don't hate Larry Markin here. I love that fit, but that's not really his game either. You're sort of banking on Kuminga to become that player right now. It's like almost a higher end talent is the way to phrase it, but like that's what they're clearly looking to compete. I think they've done better work rebounding after deciding not to keep Klay, not go into second apron than the Clippers or the Nuggets have done. So do I like the roster better than the Nuggets? No. Do I like them better than the Clippers? Absolutely, at this point. So, but that would be their biggest need. Again, unless you just really think that like Moses Moody or Kuminga or Pods is going to become that guy, but also didn't mention him in sort of the secondary playmaking options for them too. And I just don't, that's where I go back and forth, where it's like, I like Larry Marketing, but is he the guy for this team that I would just give up everything for? And it's, I mean, probably not everything, because he's going to be a free agent and you have him. And if you're keeping Kuminga, both of those guys are going to need new deals at the same time. But like, if that's the move, I guess I would still make it, but it's like, you probably need him to generate more of his own shots, or you're just hoping that infusing this team with some extra spacing, having Larry Marketing in addition to maybe Pods, and makes a leap there. And then you have Moses Moody playing some minutes. Their spacing could still be pretty wonky on this team, but with Hield, is there more room for Kuminga to kind of develop that part of his game? The Houston Rockets, they don't have a need, just because I like that they haven't really done anything this offseason, because like just continue to invest. They re-signed Aaron Holiday. They just don't have a need. Like I want to see all I want to see them play their prospects, and just let's look at all these guys who need minutes. Fred VanVleet, Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, Reed Shepard, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith, Cam Whitmore, Alperen Şengün, Tari Eason. That's 10 guys. And I didn't even mention a Jay Sean Tate or Steven Adams. So that's just a lot of bodies there. If you had to quibble, like they do maybe need, like, I guess someone like a wing size player who might be able to generate their own shot. No, Amen Thompson, sort of a wing size player, but he's almost a point guard or a fringe big at this point. I think you could also just make the case, like, let's continue to lean into complementary shooting, but I'm reticent to just list anything here for them because I don't want to see them. It's not a need, but if they wanted to make a consolidation move, which I don't see the name out there that would make sense for them. I mean, Larry Marketing would be interesting on this team. I love Jabari Smith so much, but I'd kind of love to see those two play together. But like this team just doesn't have, they're at a point in their development where it's right. We have basically all the boxes checked. Maybe we need more information about, well, what do we have in terms of primary playmakers when it's Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet and Amen Thompson? Do we need more there? Do we have enough shooting where it's okay? It's Reed Shepard, it's Jalen Green. Are we going to get is Jay Sean Tate or Tari Eason? Are they going to be healthy enough? Will they hit enough jump shots? How does Cam Whitmore fit into this equation? I'm not adding anyone to this roster personally. If you wanted to pick, I guess it might be like another veteran playmaker, that's not VanVleet's game necessarily. The Amen Thompson learning curve, and just Aaron Holiday's kind of more of a downhill threat, not going to be known as like that pass first. But this is like one of the teams where it's need is like a very strong. I wouldn't expect them to address anything if the right star, Kevin Durant, and they want him, or I'd be more interested in Devin Booker if he becomes available. Then yeah, you pounce. But there's no point in futzing and fiddling on the margins for the Rockets is basically what I'm getting at. The Indiana Pacers, I mean, the same thing. They need a wing, like a wing defender, aside from an Aaron Nesmith or having Andrew Nembhard fill that role. TJ McConnell can play some of it. I guess you can make the case that Jarris Walker defensively fits that bill. Sure. I don't know if he fits that bill offensively. They would be another, if you can get to salary matching, which you could, but it's okay. Are we comfortable getting rid of TJ McConnell at this point? They would just be an interesting Dorian Finney-Smith team to kind of take a flyer on him from there. They would have been a very interesting Mikal Bridges team, but the Knicks made sure that wasn't really happening for them. And you're kind of looking at, if they were able to scoop a free agent off the scrap heap as like kind of to take like a flyer on, there's just that guy is not really available. Maybe Devonte Green at this point, like that would be someone who'd be fairly interesting in Philly. I'm not really taking like a flyer on Jay Crowder if I'm them. Again, if you just want it as like the body type there, but then you're infringing upon just because he's like more forward than wing at this point. And so whoever you get, you don't necessarily want them. You created a weird, I don't know if it's redundancy or just positional overlap with having Obi Toppin and Pascal Siakam and Jarris Walker. Something's going to have to give, and it's not going to be Siakam's minutes, and you've just paid Toppin. And so does Walker's development suffer at all with this setup? So you don't want to bring in someone else who's not worth maybe complicating that even further. I think Dorian Finney-Smith, because if you wanted to play super big, not even like structuring out the lineup, like you could just play Dorian Finney-Smith with Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner and like Jarris Walker. If you really wanted to see what that looks like defensively, you could try it and then just throw Tyrese Halliburton at the one. But yeah, that's been their biggest need. It remains their biggest need. We'll see if they look to address it. I wouldn't expect them to do it this summer if the cost is cheap enough for Dorian Finney-Smith, but they would be a team to watch at the trade deadline for sure for me. Next team up, someone's Los Angeles Clippers, not taking ownership of them either. They kind of need, like, do they need Terrence Mann, Norman Powell, Kawhi Leonard, Derrick Jones Jr. is there. They have Nicholas Batum back. They need more playmaking. Between having Bones Highland and Kevin Porter Jr., Russell Westbrook's not going to be there. You have James Harden for sure. He might be more comfortable this season because the ball should be in his hands even more. You have Kawhi Leonard to get there. So as a secondary option, okay, sure. I guess if you want to see them go a splashier backup big route, or can someone downsize and play big man minutes for them? But you might be able to get there with Batum and Derrick Jones Jr. with Kawhi Leonard, like just having big enough lineups there with Terrence Mann rolled into there. They do not need I don't want to say forget about the off-court allegations. From a talent perspective, if you can get Miles Bridges for a song, okay. With this team, I just don't think he's going to make, even if it's costing Norman Powell is not a good defender, he's going to make the defense, I guess not worse, but he's not a defensive upgrade over Derrick Jones Jr. I'm going to be honest. I don't know if he's a defensive upgrade over Nick Batum. I think Miles Bridges is super malleable. I think he's younger when you're looking at his fit on the court. Offensively, there's not enough self-creation juice there for me to like it. So I kind of hate that addition for them. And again, it could be colored by the domestic violence issues that he had off the court. Look, that's fair. I think that the league has moved on or decided that he was punished. He quote unquote served his time there, paid his dues there. I've yet to hear anything or see anything that would suggest that he has begun the path that would make you think he's worth the second chance. Redemption is a real thing, but you also have to earn it, especially when you're sort of this repeat offender, like a proven repeat offender, where don't forget about the second case where they said there wasn't enough evidence there. They're just like anecdotally terrible. And there was certainly enough evidence in the first case, and you can't shifting stories in these situations, you take those with a grain of salt, just because when you're talking about domestic violence victims, and if any stories shift or if they paint it as like it wasn't as bad as usual, you have to take those with a grain of salt as well. It's the same thing with the Kevin Porter Jr. stuff. This organization clearly doesn't have a problem betting on potentially poor character players. I don't think he gives you enough backup playmaking either. I guess from a talent perspective, again, sure. But it's got to be that, or maybe just, unless you're really high on Mo Bamba, it's that or just sort of the backup five stuff behind Zubats. They have the tools if they want to, because they ducked the second apron. This is another team, man, their excuse for the second apron. I think the Warriors were flat out with it, where they just said in February, Joe Lacob, but they don't want to pay it. I respect that more than just, man, in the statement, the second apron, it was going to be tough. By the way, you offered Paul George a contract still, reportedly, that would have taken you into the second apron. So unless you were just dumping Norman Powell for free and getting rid of Terrence Mann, you still would have had set. You could get rid of PJ Tucker too, of course. There you go. There's your small ball five. That's why you don't need the backup five option. But so the excuses here, I understand they're tough to reconcile with, but if you're in a championship window now, you go into the second apron. If it's to keep your own players, to keep a championship core intact, and then you figure it out thereafter. If more players are getting paid, or if you really have to have a conversation about that, we need to be out of this in the next 3 years. When your window is now, it can't be about just the future. And that's what, and the Clippers just painting it as that. Like the Nuggets, at least, okay, you look at their draft track record, what they've done with youngsters, some of the moves that they've made, at least they can kind of justify it. The Clippers is just, what are you doing? You've traded all your picks already. You don't have young guys on this roster, and you offered him a contract. So you didn't want to give him the fourth year, which, again, stupid. I think that was a bad decision. I think it was a bad decision, or a curious decision. Am I open to the fact that I'll be wrong for Denver, for the Clippers? Yeah, sure. I don't root for teams to fail. I don't care if I'm right or wrong. It's not, people don't remember when I'm right anyway. They're only going to remember when I'm wrong. So for engagement purposes, I hope the Clippers win the title at this point. Like, I just don't, but it was a curious way for them to justify it, like his departure, and the fact that it sort of came out, like the way they released it before he even picked his next team, that was just super bizarre too, just super cringe. And just as a recap, we did cover this, Nick Batum back. They do have Chris Dunn. So forgot about Chris Dunn for a minute. Is that enough playmaking though? I guess with between Kevin Porter Jr.'s flyer, James Harden, Chris Dunn doesn't, I don't know if he does enough playmaking for me. You have Kawhi Leonard though, and Batum. So maybe I'm just like, yeah, it might just be the backup five route, unless you're really trusting Mo Bamba here. It's one of those two things. I think you could also add for this team, like they just need shooting. Even if you think Kevin Porter Jr. is going to come in and launch and hit a bunch of threes, if Derrick Jones Jr. repeats his performance from beyond the arc he had this past regular season, Batum will hit some threes. It's just very iffy now. You have a lot of guys that, like, you don't have a lot of off-ball, good, like, bankable shooters. It's Norman Powell, and then, like, I'm like, maybe we'll throw Nicholas Batum in, and Terrence Mann, of course, is in there. So, yeah, this team has a bunch of needs. They should be pretty frisky defensively. Zubac's a good rim protector, and they have a lot of just optionality and malleability on the roster. And quick pet peeve, I've heard, so there's always, like, every once in a while, there's, like, the basketball cliches going around, where I think I saw point of attack was there and maybe advantage creation. I saw optionality was becoming one. I just want everyone to know that we probably are responsible for, like, jumping on the bandwagon of cliches at points. Optionality and scalability were here first. So just remember that you heard it on Hardwood Knocks first, or at least in the early aughts before they became cliches. The Lakers, they need LeBron to take that $1 million pay cut to duck the second apron. It's fantastic PR work by his team to make it look like, yeah, he's willing to take less if they can get actual talent, knowing they can't even get fucking Jonas Valanciunas. Or he might take $1 million less for us to duck the second apron. If they want to duck the second apron, it's just dump a real salary. Are you looking at Jared Vanderbilt trades? Are you looking at Gabe Vincent trades? Or is it we're getting rid of some of the minimums where we gave those guys those options? This team is so weird. They need two-way wings. It's just, to boil it down, they've actively decided every year since they've won the title that two-way wings are stupid, or they've devalued them at almost every turn. And I guess over the past two seasons or off seasons, they haven't, but only because they're not in a position to get them. So I don't know how you get any two-way wings on this roster. It's going to have to happen via trade. They would be an interesting Dorian Finney-Smith team. Can you shave salary as part of that deal? Like, what is the matching salary you want to send out there? Brooklyn might be willing to take on Gabe Vincent. That's not enough alone for Dorian Finney-Smith. So you need to include, you can't step ladder your way with minimums. On top of that, I don't know. I'm not giving Jared Vanderbilt up in that, just because he's probably one of your better just point of attack. There it is, point of attack defenders here right now, unless you think that Gabe Vincent is going to have sort of this one, be healthy and then have a Miami Heat renaissance. Vanderbilt actually makes less than him. I don't know why I thought he was on the books for more. That'd be an interesting Dorian Finney-Smith team, but they just need any reasonable, just this guy might be a two-way wing. The Heat just absolutely need to be in. The Lakers absolutely need to be in on that player. And look, I think the LeBron deal, getting the max, he should get his money. It complicates their path to staying beneath the second apron. I don't care much though. Like I think like you could still just make moves and cut salaries. Like you could just aggregate, just as an example, you have Gabe Vincent and Jared Vanderbilt on the books for $21.7 million next year. You could trade that money and just take like back like a $17 million player if that player is indeed sort of available. In theory, you could step out of your way with like 3. I wonder if making a deal is harder because it doesn't seem like they want to give up Dalton Connect or even an Austin Reeves. And so 2 firsts, 2 swaps plus salary. Who does that get you? Probably not in the Trae Young discussion. Doesn't look like Darius Garland's going to request a trade either. None of those guys are wings, by the way. Could you get like, how hot would Atlanta be just to get off DeAndre Hunter? And you could say, this is kind of like a facsimile of it. Like, what do I call him? 1.25, 1.5 way wing. Just with, if you were like exchanging him for money, but he's making more than Rui Hachimura. So it would take 2 salaries, and Atlanta's not going to be a team that's going to want to take on money, but that's what they need is 2-way wing. So we move on to the Memphis Grizzlies, which they're just kind of floating around out there. Luke Kennard still remains unsigned. They declined his team option. Haven't really done anything outside of drafting Zach Edey. The team is going to be frisky as is, but they need a bigger wing / forward. I mean, maybe they think they have the answer in Gigi Jackson. I'm open to the concept of it, but like between him and Vince Williams and Marcus Smart or Desmond Bane kind of playing up, you just need like more of a properly sized wing. They would still be, the money getting there is just impossible to make work. They'd be a good Jeremy Grant team. The Lakers, I still think, would be a pretty good Jeremy Grant team, by the way, too. So you're probably looking at like a 3-for-1 in that scenario if they have to cut money as part of the process too. But is that the trade you want to go in on? I don't know. That's what the Grizzlies have needed since basically they decided Rudy Gay was not that player however many years ago, and he wasn't even that player, I guess, when they had him. So again, I wouldn't expect them to make a big move. Would they make a move closer to the trade deadline when they kind of know what's happening with this core? They just haven't seen enough of Jaren Jackson Jr., John Morant has been made, and Marcus Smart together. Like, you need more of that information, and then let's sprinkle in some more Vince Williams and Gigi Jackson into there. So it's a tough team to really say they need anything, but we know what their need is. I just wouldn't expect them to even try and address it right now. We are on to the Miami Heat, who have lost Caleb Martins. They haven't done anything, but they lost. Oh, they did things. They re-signed Thomas Bryant, 1-year deal at the minimum, and Alec Burks, 1 year at the minimum. That's a really good pickup. The Burks one can generate his own shot, hit some catch and shoot threes, play makes some, gets a little tunnel vision. You'll become frustrated with him at points on defense, but at the minimum, that's one of the better minimum signings that we've seen this offseason. They need like another advantage creator, but preferably one with size. Do you want a different type of front court partner for Bam at Adebayo? It's just, they could still get to Nikola Jovic. Interesting now. The way I know people have talked about his offense. The way he defended last year, I thought was great. So you have him, you have Kevin Love, you have Jaime Jaquez, Jimmy Butler. You move bodies around and okay, poof, you've got like a frontline partner next to Bam, a higher end one. That's why they're in on Larry Markin. He would be perfect for this team. Not going to create advantages for you on the ball necessarily. But you could go that route. Like someone who's just going to open up the floor, be a good play finisher, can do some stuff on the ball. Otherwise, you need an advantage creator, but that player probably needs to have size, just because between Terry Rozier and Tyler Hero and Alec Burks, like, you're just not super huge in those areas. And that's not Terry Rozier's strength, by the way. So maybe you're exchanging one of those guards in a hypothetical trade, but like, who's the bigger, advantage creator that's just going to be out there that you're also going to have the best trade package for? I don't have the answer there, but their offense still feels like it could be spotty this year. And that could be even worse if, both of Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler need to enjoy better health than they did last season. If you're only getting from one of them, the ceiling on this offense feels pretty low. Could they get, it's not really vague. Like, what would it cost to get Keldon Johnson would be interesting here. But again, what is not enough on ball stuff. That's someone who's like, the straight line drives. And then in theory, hit those off the catch threes. Depending on like how much he actually cost to get, I wouldn't actually mind them going after him, but that's sort of their biggest need. Don't know what name really springs to mind here. I love Larry Marketing for them, even though I did not list that as their biggest need. That's their second though. Just like, increase let's upgrade that spot that's next to Bam from like Nikola Jovic or Jaquez, or let's allow, I guess Jovic, if you're in on him, you're fine with that. But like rather than having Jimmy Butler or Jaime Jaquez, the way you're structuring out your lineups, be your de facto fours in those scenarios, can you get someone else to play that role? Losing Caleb Martin's kind of big there because he opened up sort of those 3 wing type lineups to where you could envision that not being necessarily a huge need. The Milwaukee Bucks, since we last talked, they added Taurean Prince on a 1-year minimum. I think for, to replace like the maddening Jay Crowder minutes, like that's a good approximation. You're going to be just as frustrated with Taurean Prince. I trust him more as a 3-point shooter, I think, at this point than Jay Crowder, and he's probably okay, but not probably. He's going to be okay guarding smaller type of wings, like truer wings than Jay Crowder would be. But in the right matchup, Jay Crowder is probably more valuable defensively because Taurean Prince isn't giving you a ton of resistance defensively. With the Bucks, though, I mean, their biggest need still kind of feels like athleticism on the wings. I know there's been talk about trading Brook Lopez, but you have Bobby Portis there, and you can go to Giannis at the 5. It's looking at those 2, 3, 4 spots. Is could you just get more athletic? If that player can shoot, okay, like that's a plus as well. But just more bounce and more pop from there. So that's not something that they've done unless you really are like a big AJ Johnson believer, or are you like super big believer in Tyler Smith? How much do those guys even wind up playing? They've now added DeLon Wright and Taurean Prince, so that doesn't really satisfy that need, even if I think it improves the balance of their roster. I think DeLon Wright specifically will end up helping them a pretty great deal. The Minnesota Timberwolves, a team that I think has done some really nice work on the margins, or at least the Rob Dillingham swing. It's a risk, but I like the idea of, they're in the second apron, but they're still just kind of doing shit. We already mentioned Luka Garza. They have Joe Ingles 1 year at the minimum, and PJ Dozier, that's an interesting flyer. I like that Joe Ingles kind of gives you the veteran backup playmaking element with better floor spacing than Kyle Anderson. Clearly not as valuable defensively. This team, I still worry a little bit, though, about its wing shooting and trying to open up the floor. And that's, I think, if you're looking at Mike Conley, Anthony Edwards, Rob Dillingham, and then Joe Ingles, I think you could say that they have enough reserve playmaking, even if you would like them. I mean, like, what do you want them to go out and get? Ish Smith or somebody? They could use, like, if Luke Kennard just falls into minimum territory, I don't know why Memphis would let that happen. That's something, though, that he'd be a great fit for Denver, be a great fit for a bunch of teams. I think that's my biggest concern for Minnesota. They have guys who open up the floor in Mike Conley, in Naz Reid, in Karl Anthony Towns, but their wing shooting can be shaky just between Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels, and then even Anthony Edwards himself. Good, not great. Maybe even you wouldn't even call him a super dependable shooter. Joe Ingles does give you some of that, but how much are you relying on a 37-year-old Joe Ingles at that point to play? But this is a team that they're going to be, if Dillingham hits, they're going to be fucking scary. And even if he doesn't, you just have the prospect of another leap from Anthony Edwards, Naz Reid, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels. Like, those are all guys that continue to get better. Good time to continue buying Minnesota Timberwolves stock if you had sold it before last season. Our next team is the New Orleans Pelicans. We're still waiting on because they're folding it. We thought it was going to have to be completed before the new league year started. But that I don't think the DeJounte Murray trade is officially complete. But you couldn't go in. You would have been into the tax if you completed it before this new league year. Now, because DeJounte Murray is making even more, closer to the $25 million mark, you need to figure out the additional salaries that are going to go in there. I know EJ Liddell started being involved, so I don't know if it has been announced. If it has, I apologize. But they had a DeJounte Murray. I liked it for them. They're currently I think almost $6 million beneath the tax. You could still make a case that they need more complementary shooting, but they really need a 5. There's just no center on this roster right now that you can bank on playing minutes, unless you're going to lean all the way into Zion Williamson at the 5. I haven't gone and looked at all these, like the way depth charts are listed on all these different websites. Zion Williamson is probably just listed as their starting center, which, I mean, Murray, McCollum, Ingram, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, like that's enough bodies. So yeah, we'll just play Zion at the 5. I don't know that you've insulated him defensively, and you want to put him in a position to succeed because of how well he played defensively last year. I also think that there might be more of a wear and tear element to just being in the 5 flat out. And given his injury history, you don't want to subject him to even more of that. It's a center, and it almost needs to happen via trade because you're looking at the centers that are going to be available right now on the open market. And it's okay. Daniel Tice isn't really going to do anything for you. Like, how many minutes? The Mike Muscala is floating around out there. I don't think you're going to fall on Precious Achua range. I would guess that he's probably back with the Knicks at this point. Damian Jones still floating out there. You want to take a flyer on JaVale McGee or Kem Birch? I don't know. There's just not a lot of good. The pickings are slim. If this was a Tom Thibodeau team, I might say like just take the flyer on Josh Gibson. But yeah, so it's gonna have to Dominic Barlow. I don't know what he would end up being. And Paul Reed was just waived by the Sixers too. We haven't gotten them yet. So do either of them fall into your price range? Those might be some options there. Otherwise, it feels like it has to happen via trade. I know everybody kind of wants the Jared Allen there. Making the money work, it's a little bit tougher when you look at the players they sent out for DeJounte Murray. Are you trading Brandon Ingram in that deal? I hate his fit in Cleveland, by the way. So do you need a third team? There's also going to have to be more money maybe coming back your way involved. So I could still see a case for like, all right, let's get some higher volume shooting in there. Luke Kennard could also be interesting, or Gary Trent Jr. if he's going to fall into their price range for this team, but they need a 5. I mean, like they need a 5, preferably one who you like them to protect the rim and space the floor, but it's preferably one who's a good rim protector. And then can they at least create some vertical spacing? Can they set good screens? But you need like a good rim protector, I would argue, more than anything. Next team up, the New York Knicks. I guess we're going to stick with 5s for them. I mean, they have that Mikal Bridges trade officially completed. I would expect them to maybe bring back Precious Achiuwa now. They are capped at the second apron rather than the first, but it's a 5. I mean, I look at this roster and I still say, all right, like, you have guys who can shoot, but who is like a really good high volume shooter? And it's Dante DiVincenzo. And like Randall and Brunson might be good shooters for self creators, but they're not these caps lock shooters. Even Mikal Bridges is not a caps lock shooter. I think you're overwhelmed by the sheer breadth of talent and depth on this team. It doesn't matter. But a 5 for sure. Does Precious Achiuwa come back? Are you a Daniel Tice team? Are you a Nick Richards team? He's only making $5 million. That might be in it. You know, New Orleans is looking to go try and pull off a trade. That's someone who could maybe fit there as well too. But what I will say on the Knicks is that, and I might have mentioned this in the last podcast, I really hope that having OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and even Josh Hart factor in warms Tibbs up to the idea of, okay, well, we can play Randall at the 5 without him being our defensive 5. There's the OG Anunoby can play a lot of that role for 5, 10 minutes, 12 minutes a game. And then Randall's your 5 on offense, where he's going to be more of a mismatch. If you want to see him set screens, go like roll downhill that way, or just he's more of a mismatch if he's going to attack on the ball. If they have their 5 on him, and if they don't, like then he's going to be able to maybe punish smaller mismatches. Or you have someone else, like who's the 5 covering? Is it probably Josh Hart as the liability? He'll get that 5 moving off his feet. Is it OG Anunoby? Same difference with Mikal Bridges. So not that I don't want them to sign a center, just having Mitchell Robinson and Jericho Sims is super risky, but I want to see them get to more of those minutes in general. We're going to go to the Oklahoma City Thunder. What do they need? I think they could still need a third player aside from a Jalen Williams or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that's going to put defenses in rotation. But I don't know where those minutes are coming from, just full disclosure here. And maybe Alex Caruso or Cason Wallace can get there a little bit. I know a lot of Thunder fans like, well, we've been developing Ousmane Dieng as a ball handler. Defenses don't care about that. And we didn't see enough from I love Ousmane Dieng. People listen to the podcast know. I don't think he's going to be your answer for next season. The answer might be, are we going to put the ball in Chet Holmgren's hands more? And do we have Isaiah Hartenstein screening for him, or just in the 5-out setup, is he going to be able to do more creation? I also just recognize you're going to get better. Name I mentioned, Cason Wallace, someone who could get better on the ball. Jalen Williams, not done growing at all. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can still get better. Nitpicking here because they have every fucking thing. Like this team is probably now with the addition of Hartenstein, aside from the Celtics, might be the most complete team in the league when you're looking at the balance, being able to play different styles and just a relative lack of weaknesses. I think it has to be them. Boston's first, and they will be until proven otherwise. But the Nuggets, no, they've been demoted from that discussion. Maybe the Mavericks, who ironically have sort of the same type of need, but their defense, I think, specifically around the perimeters, a little bit more shaky there. Now we're on to the Orlando Magic. I don't know that I've turned on a team's offseason more quickly than I have for the Magic. I don't hate it, but I was prepared for it to be spectacular once they signed Kentavious Caldwell-Pope from Denver. And then it's just been, well, we're going to retain our own guys. I think, look, they elevated Jonathan Isaac's salary. I think looks like they're starting him at 26.9 million. So almost 27 million next year. And then it declines from there. So they renegotiated it. It amounts to 5 years and 84 million in total. That's going to make them a lot more flexible as they signed Franz Wagner to that max extension, $224.2 million, with language that could take it to, if he makes All NBA, up above 269. They re-signed Mo Wagner as well to a 2-year, $22 million deal. I get what they're doing, and like there's internal growth from Suggs, from Wagner, from Banchero you're going to get. I wanted to see him get a higher end offensive organizer, or just someone who did some of that stuff while just adding a ton of shooting. I think KCP in motion as a shooter in general, I know his clip fell off, but he's someone defenses will respect. That satisfies some of the role, but I don't know that you've opened up the floor nearly enough here, and you have not given yourself enough proven just floor general juice at this point. Maybe you're going to rely on Wagner or Suggs to just do more of that, and they're making the leap. Or is this going to? I don't think the team is better set up to necessarily give Anthony Black more minutes and work against his spacing limitations. But I haven't hated any of their individual moves, though. The Jonathan Isaac one is just a smart piece of business. He goes from, he's going to make $27 million next year, and he'll drop all the way back down to about 16.2. Then he's at 14.9, then 13, then 12.3 in 2028, 2029. This is someone who's only 27. So you're talking about like he's going to be in his early 30s. That could end up being a steal. I assume there's some type of injury protections on this. I have not seen any of it yet. So I like what they've done. They should still be a defensive beast. The floor will be a little bit more open. However, I really wanted to see them be more aggressive just on the trade market, or for like, why not even like this could have been maybe unspectacular, but a Tyus Jones team. So that would have been nice. Offseason's not over, but that is still just their biggest need, is someone to organize the offense who preferably won't shrink the floor in the process. We are on to the Philadelphia 76ers, who have done some stuff since we last talked. Well, did one thing, and that's added Caleb Martin on a 4-year deal worth more than $32 million. Then they waived Paul Reed. So they're basically just, unless something changes, signing Caleb Martin into space. Look, they've assembled a real roster around the big three of Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey, having Kelly Oubre, having Andre Drummond, Eric Gordon. We'll see how many minutes that he's able to play there. So there's still work for them to be done. I would expect Kyle Lowry to be back on this team probably. But I like their roster a lot more than I kind of thought I was going to. I think the Caleb Martin sign is actually huge. Their biggest need, I still think, would be like a 4 combo forward type. Between Caleb Martin and Paul George and Kelly Oubre, you're able to build that together into like a 2-3-4 rotation. But I would like to see someone more of a, pulling off a Dorian Finney-Smith deal before midseason. That's just not going to happen now. I'd like to see more of a body that goes that route with like not, it doesn't have to be a pure forward, multi-position, but like if you're having, I'll say it this way, if you're having Paul George or Caleb Martin defend the 4, they're playing up. So you want someone who's a 4 that can maybe play down, would be the best way to phrase it. That's not exactly the smallest, ask, and they're not just going to get it from, Devonte Green be a nice flyer on the team. Maybe you bring back KJ Martin for that. Do you take a shot at Jay Crowder? Doesn't really, satisfy the defending down thing. And if they don't have to defend down, although Larry Markkinen would fit. I just kind of wonder, now you can't get there. If Larry Markkinen is still floating around mid-season, and there is, if they renegotiate, well, it makes it tougher. If they don't renegotiate and extend him, like the Sixers could still do something along those lines, and maybe you're working like a mega KJ Martin sign and trade. At this point, you just have 5 tradable first-round picks, so there are still things that they can do. There will be some salary cap hoops that they have to jump through now. But yeah, just someone like in that vein. I don't know, like, do you bring Robert Covington back? Marcus Morris could maybe do some of that for you, but we're talking signings now. Like, that's what you're looking at after the major work you've done. Love the Caleb Martin signing for them. I think we'll see a better outside shooting performance from him this year, and he gives them a lot of defensive optionality, which just Paul George, Caleb Martin, and Joel Embiid, you've kind of built out the skeleton of what should be a really good defense, but it is kind of contingent upon, right, everyone needs to be healthy. And on nights, does Drummond do enough if Embiid's not playing or if he's hurt? What does that do to your defense? I don't know how well they're set up to navigate that situation at the moment. Next team would be the Phoenix Suns. They've added Monte Morris 1 year at the minimum. I actually think, given their turnover issues, especially in the fourth quarter, that becomes pretty big. I know he hasn't been healthy or great for a couple of years. And then they re-signed Damian Lee, which also means that they're probably not re-signing Josh Okogie, which I think is a good thing for them. The Josh Okogie experiment did not work out. Their biggest need, I think, it's just you need to revamp the 5-man rotation to get someone who's more in line with what Mike Budenholzer likes to do. I know you have Mason Plumlee, you have Yusuf Nurkic. Maybe we see some minutes as Bol, like just be the rim protector. You're not a good defender, but you're big, you're long. Just be the rim protector. There are pathways if they could rope in like a 3rd and 4th team, because I don't think the Blazers want Nurkic. Like rolling the dice on Robert Williams III here, I think would be a really good bet for them. But they need, and I don't think that, like, maybe even a Nick Richards via trade is a name I've mentioned for them a bunch. I'd like to just see someone who I think fits the motif of one as a screener and diver more, but also just defensively, not just because Budenholzer's there, but a stronger option defensively at the center spot. And right now, like you really don't have it. So like, are we going to play Kevin Durant at the 5? Or like I said, Bol is the primary rim protector. Uninspiring at best. Think that's very clearly their biggest need. I don't know what else you want to, I guess, two-way wings, but that's just like, I mean, you got Damian Lee back. That's got to count for something. And you have Grace. Grace now is probably more two-way than people realize last year. So that just feels so unreal. Oh, two-way wings. Like, yeah, this team that can only offer the minimums doesn't really have anything to trade. That'll definitely work out. The Portland Trailblazers. So fewer centers, maybe? Like, is that what they need at this point? But in all honesty, like, I think I would continue to want to just see shooting. And I don't really care the position that it comes at, just because you have so much equity tied up in the backcourt. Can the shooting come at sort of the 3 or the 4 spot where, yeah, okay, you might be infringing upon some Sharp or Simon minutes there, or Tybalt minutes, or Jeremy Grant minutes, but you just have enough bodies at the 5. I'm resigned to it not coming there. You also could say they have Denny Avdia now, and just with Simons, do you want like sort of another backup type of point guard in this? Like Portland just continuing to punt on the idea of like a true backup floor general. I think Denny Avdia probably gives you enough as sort of a driver and playmaker there, but he doesn't upgrade your shooting enough. He's probably a shooting improvement over what you're fielding last year, but like just there's a lot of question marks here. You're not going to get any as of right now spacing at the 5. You have Tamani Kamara, kind of shot better from 3 last year than I think a lot of people realize, but like a shaky jumper there. Matisse Thybulle, same difference. Even if you're banking on sort of Chris Murray, like taking a jump, and Shaden Sharp, taking a jump, and you have Simons, this team just needs like someone who's going to help get their 3-point attempt rate up there, or just be able to, they have a few guys who are either better off or most used to working on ball. And so can we get some just more guys to dot them around there? I did not mention Duop Reeds. Like, yeah, you can get some floor spacing in the front court that way. Some higher volume stuff there would feel like it's going to be their biggest need. The Sacramento Kings, who, I mean, they'd be the team that feels like it's most likely going to date this. They're pursuing a DeMar DeRozan sign and trade with the Bulls. I'm not going to pretend to love it. I don't hate it. They could certainly use someone else to break down defenses and be a primary playmaker. That's just like, so are you just never going to play him with Sabonis or De'Aaron Fox? Because the spacing could get wonky there. And then if you're trading Kevin Huerter in part of that deal, you're becoming a worse shooting team. And like the floor spacing isn't super perfect. Like, who are the shooters you're counting on aside from Huerter? I know he's working off a down year, but it's Kevin Huerter. You have to go by the previous sample, not just what happened last year. So I guess Harrison Barnes and Keegan Murray and Keon Ellis, like if we're not including Kevin Huerter there, that's just not enough. So I prefer to see them just get some more optionality on those wing spots in the form of someone who can shoot. I understand the need. Yeah, a playmaking wing would be ideal, but Denny Avdia and Mikal Bridges have been traded, so you're not going to see, you're not just going to see those players readily available. The Kings have been linked to Larry Markkinen. I like his fit a lot better than I like DeRozan's fit. I'd like to just see them open up the floor more. And I don't know that you need to skew as defense heavy as you would have. I just think the leap that Keegan Murray has made, you'll probably get enough if you finagle your matchups the right way with Harrison Barnes, because you have Keon Ellis as well. It's like, that feels like maybe there's enough there to do something where it's, if you could just continue to open the floor. Let's not forget Devin Carter cut his teeth defensively. So I don't know how much he plays as a rookie coming in, but that's someone who might be able to take on some really tough assignments for you. And going Huerter for DeMar DeRozan is just so counterintuitive to opening up the floor even more. And it comes back to the challenges, I think, of not, lampooning him as a player or building block, but that is part of the challenge of building around Sabonis, even De'Aaron Fox a little bit when those are your main two, and neither of them are perfect shooters. But De'Aaron Fox, he can hit some off the dribble looks and will stretch the floor. That is not what Sabonis is going to do. To add DeMar DeRozan into that fold is just, it's shaky. I don't hate it. I might like it more if Harrison Barnes was the outgoing money rather than Kevin Huerter. So I get the theory of what DeMar DeRozan would do for this team. I just don't love what the spacing might look like after said deal happens. And so I'd like to see them open up the floor. Maybe I'm already kind of like in DeMar DeRozan as a king mode, and that's why I'm already here. The San Antonio Spurs. Yeah, I think it's wing shooting for them. You have Chris Paul, you have Trey Jones, so I'm going to say that they're fine at the floor general spot now. I would like to see them also just get a little bit better with that primary front court spot next to Wemby. Is it going to be Keldon Johnson? Is it Jeremy Sohan playing a bunch of minutes there? I don't know. But are either of those guys good enough shooters to kind of open up the floor? So you have like, I mean, when you're looking at your plus shooters, I guess you could Wemby at the 5, we'll call him a plus shooter. Devin Vassell, okay, there. That's like it. I don't know what you want to consider Chris Paul. It's certainly not Trey Jones. Keldon Johnson, Sohan, Branham, like those are all just even Stephon Castle coming in like that. We're talking about a lot of guys with limited range. The idea of Zach Collins might maybe give you some shooting. So they've been linked to Larry Markkinen, and I think they're my favorite Larry Markkinen team. Just the Thunder, I guess, could still be like the Thunder are my favorite team for everybody, apparently. But like, or even just like, could they get Trey Lyles from the Kings? Like, just someone to kind of open up, like more people to open up the floor here. And I just don't like. There's not enough of it. And Keldon Johnson's coming off a down year as a shooter. Maybe with Chris Paul, like now with 48 minutes, so to speak, or let's say 40 minutes of good point guard play. But like Branham has not proven enough as a shooter. That's not going to be. We'll see how even like any minutes he's going to get. But like a Blake Wesley, that's not going to be his strength. It's not Jeremy Sohan's strength. So it's really just Devin. Like to count on is let's be reasonable about their shooting. I will give it to Chris Paul. I'll throw Keldon Johnson in there, Vassell and Wemby. And it's just like, how many of those are just guaranteed to shoot 37% or better on 5+ 3-point attempts per game of the group I just mentioned? Probably Wemby and Vassell are the most likely picks. And so if you want to include Collins or Mamu in there as one of the guys who could theoretically space the floor, fine. I think it needs to come from the wing spots more is what I would like to see from San Antonio. And look, I'll count Larry Markkinen. He could play 4-3, especially next to Wembanyama. That's absolutely perfect. So if the Spurs want to trade for Markkinen, they have my blessing. I know everyone was a little bit worried about that. The Toronto Raptors, I think they still need it's such a weird place to be. How many times am I going to say that about the Raptors? Like, can we get an actual wing here? Like a true wing. Is RJ Barrett okay, sized like a wing? Grady Dick sized like a wing? RJ Barrett comes closest to actualizing the wing part. It's not Akbaji, it's not Bruce Brown. Maybe you think it's Jacoby Walter. How much does he play? They need a more proven like wing and probably someone who could shoot. Like they need probably someone who's going to guarantee them more half court just shooting than in RJ Barrett or an Akbaji. Like Grady Dick is there, okay, and you have quickly, and let's assume that Barnes is going to continue to improve because he's Barnes. Like you need another type of wing. And I don't even know, they don't even need to be caps lock, but like I'll continue to mention him. Just give me Dorian Finney-Smith on this team at this point. I would have loved when they had the cap flexibility. I thought Simone Fontecchio was a great potential addition for them. Maybe they could still evaluate some sign and trade scenarios because Detroit's stacking up on all these shooters who are not Simone Fontecchio, but they're also trying to work with his smaller cap hold. Not moral of the story. I don't think it's a realistic option. Can they go at like a Luke Kennard on this team would make a lot of sense? I don't know what his market is. He's got so much tunnel vision on this roster. They probably need someone who's going to be not more plug and play, but at least not kind of actively hurt you on offense with his tunnel vision. So Gary Trent Jr.'s return is kind of out. And I would say a properly sized 3 that's doing a lot of these things. And that's not Gary Trent Jr. 6'5", around there. That's not going to be his bag. I did mention Luke Kennard, but that's not going to solve that either. And they're not going to be a team that gives up assets in a trade at this point. Like I think they've kind of shown their hand as we're going to take a little bit more of a gradual approach here, but it might just come down to, can they take flyers on someone? Again, I don't think that player's out there in free agency. Look, you put Simone Fontecchio on this team. I'm all in if you could get there. Are you a team that's going to try and like, do you become a Gordon Hayward team? I just don't, that'd be interesting. I think Gordon Hayward at this point, like if he's getting that minimum from someone, that'd just be interesting. Do you try and take a flyer on like rehabilitating? What's Joe Harris? Like, how is his body looking these days? Chuma Okeke, is that someone that you could like take a flyer on whose career's just been derailed by injuries and never really played a ton? He's shown flashes in Orlando. So I don't know. That's like the need. I just don't expect them to like actively do anything about it. As some quick breaking news, DeMar DeRozan per Shams is traveling to meet the Kings in Sacramento this weekend. The Kings are in serious pursuit of him. Everything I said still holds true. So if he goes to the Kings, that won't date this podcast. Look at me kind of planning ahead here. Our next team, and we're getting towards the end here, folks. We have the Utah Jazz. They need to figure out, they could probably use fewer like center fours too. I don't know, like, was it really necessary for them to go out there and sign Drew Eubanks? I just don't understand. They still need wings, especially if just like, they have Cody Williams, who we all know I love Cody Williams. I hope he plays a shit ton. That also might be the benefit of trading Markkinen. You open up minutes for him, maybe for Bryce Sensabaugh. Those guys aren't wings. Taylor Hendricks, not a wing. Kyle Filipowski, not a wing. Darius Baisley, not a wing. They just need wings. And if you can get that as part of if you're able to if I'm the Heat and they were just like first round pick, salary, and Jaime Jaquez for Larry Markkinen, I don't know that I'm saying no right out of the gate as Miami, but like if you're able to get a prospect along those lines, just another younger type wing player, the Spurs, they're not going to give you Devin Vassell. I'd probably count Jeremy Sohan here. Like he can play, like he could guard close to 4 positions at this point. So I would count him if you end up getting him from San Antonio. They were linked to Miami, so that'd be a Jaime Jaquez there. I don't know which other. I mean, a bunch of other teams should be showing interest. I'm just trying to think of like where do you look at? Would New Orleans be willing to give up either a Herb Jones or a Trey Murphy for him if they knew Markkinen wanted to stick around? And we're saying Markkinen and Zion are a front court. Or are you getting Brandon Ingram in that scenario? I don't think that's someone who's, if you're trading Larry Markkinen, you're not interested in the Brandon Ingram route. So just trying to think of like teams. Larry Markkinen in Memphis would be super interesting. What if you just built something around GG Jackson and money? I guess it'd have to be Marcus Smart's money at that point. Does that do anything for Utah? Like that, you could talk me into that. I mean, Houston's got wing prospects to spare, but like if you're getting Markkinen and planning on paying him, you're basically saying that Jabari Smith or Şengün isn't long, and I guess that would be Şengün in that instance. Maybe, I mean, is that like would you do Şengün? I don't know, like Şengün and either Tari Eason or Cam Whitmore as part of the like marketing trade? Because it doesn't seem like Houston's totally sold on Şengün, and the Jazz have enough bigs, but they're clearly not sold. John Collins, whatever, they're clearly not sold on Walker Kessler. They want like a younger big that they can run their offense through. I don't know that I love it. I don't know that I hate it either. Could you get, of course, there's Kuminga from Golden State. That might come close to a wing prospect. Or if you're just taking picks in that package, then definitely get Moses Moody. Someone free Moses Moody. Nice target for Toronto would be, I think he would fit really nicely there. He fit really nicely on a lot of teams, actually. So yeah, finding like you need to, I think the goal needs to be to get a wing prospect back in whatever Larry Markkinen trade you're making. And I just like there are teams that we just went through, okay, that maybe they end up there. I'm like they could give you that. Excuse me. I don't know if there are any others that I'm missing here. Like Denver could give you a wing and Michael Porter Jr. I don't know that you want him, but Larry Markkinen in Denver as just like if he replaces Michael Porter Jr., you're willing to give up Peyton Watson in that scenario. Money gets all sorts of crazy, but the Jazz have a ton of cap space. You would have to include your 2031 pick, I think. Would you do that? I don't think Utah would do that. But like Michael Porter Jr. is a talent flyer. You probably need to give up 2 of your young guys the pick in addition to Michael Porter Jr.'s salary. I don't even know if that moves Utah. I'm going to tell you right now, if it was Brown, Watson, and a pick, and then Michael Porter Jr. for Larry Markkinen, I'm probably not doing it because Brown and it would have to be like you can have one of those guys, and it can't be Brown. I don't think Brown is too important to this team now. So it could be Watson, and if you want Strother and the first and Michael Porter Jr., I'm doing it. I mean, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Jokic, and Larry Markkinen, that's fucking nasty front line. That is a nasty. For those are all dudes who could really play the 5 in a pinch too. I don't think they have the assets. I'm just spitballing here if you wanted to go that route. And we are on to our final team, which is the Washington Wizards. I still want to see them get, and I'm maybe Bub Carrington ends up being this guy. Just a younger floor general type. You have Brogdon on this team already, and I guess you could say that they're a little bit wing lighter after giving up Denny Avdija. So it's okay. You have Kuzma, but are they eventually going to trade him? And then it's Bilal Coulibaly, and after that, it's Corey Kispert. But I'm going to go with, I'd like to see him try to chase a playmaker that they can maybe evaluate against the future. I mean, for them, and even Brooklyn was a team I mentioned, and maybe he becomes available at the trade deadline. I just don't know who you have now that OKC would want, but I loved Aaron Wiggins for this team. Maybe that's something Brooklyn could look at if OKC still wants to look at Cam Johnson or Dorian Finney-Smith. I don't think they do. I think they're shooting higher than that. So just a younger primary playmaker type. Again, I want to see Bub Carrington get a ton of minutes. Tyus Jones could theoretically still be back here, but I would like to see them go that route. I'm trying to look at names though at the moment to see just like, are there even any flyer types? Like, could you get a Trey Mann from Charlotte? Are they kind of willing to not give up on him, but give you him? What could you do with the Knicks? Like, what are you facilitating there to get Deuce McBride, a flyer on him? You're not going to get Jalen Pickett. From Jaden Hardy would be great, but I think he's really important to what Dallas is doing now. Is there like they do have other salaries. If they wanted to look at, you would be pretty small here, but if they wanted to look at bringing in Brogdon, that's a route that you could go, and maybe you get Jaden Hardy as part of that. I don't hate that. And so your salaries there are just like you have Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleba. Like those are your kind of your primary salaries, and then Jaden Hardy is in there. You're kind of, but you're leaving it awfully small at that point. But I don't think that that's, especially if you're willing to include Olivier Maxence Prosper as just, well, if you're giving up Jaden Hardy, I probably wouldn't do that. But Jaden Hardy from Dallas, maybe they don't view him as important so long as Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are there. He was playing by the end of the playoffs, but that would be a name. They're just, you're not going to give up the equity even if Detroit wants to get rid of Jaden Ivey. They would be, I don't like the salary matching here gets weird, and I don't know what Chicago wants, but like they would be just like Lonzo Ball. That'd be a fun team to be. Okay, let's just see what his knees have left. You could get to, well, they're so cheap with all their other stuff. I mean, you could send them Brogdon. Is it a 3-team trade where you're sending Brogdon somewhere and you're just getting Lonzo Ball and maybe something else, and then another team's taking on Brogdon and sending something to the Bulls because their money is I don't think the Bulls want Jordan Poole. And so after that, you're not giving up Kyle Kuzma and Lonzo Ball trade unless it's, again, a third team. You're getting back a shit ton of stuff. They would be a fun and if you're going through teams, that would be worth just, all right, let's just kind of see what happens with the Lonzo Ball situation. I would throw Charlotte as a team. That'd be like, okay, like, yeah, why not? I wouldn't hate it for Detroit just to take that flyer. I would, like I said, I would not hate it for Washington. I'm trying to think of teams that would have the flexibility to just be kind of look at that. That's probably it. Though like Orlando just out of cap, and what is the money that's going out in that scenario? That's a bad one. Now we've hit all the signings. The only thing I didn't really comment on too much is the Franz Wagner getting the extension. I think that I would have waited if that's what he was commanding. I guess you don't have the cap space next season because you decided not to roll it over, which again, fine. Just he shot a really low percentage on jumpers last year. He was sub 29% from 3. He ends up being sub 44% on 2-point jumpers. And you haven't improved your spacing enough to say, okay, well, like we're going to bank on him getting less attention and having more room to work on the ball and or even just to get off threes. That was just, I know the cap is going up. I know these are the fun maxes, as ESPN's Brian Windhorst calls them, but that was just, why could we not have kicked that decision down use restricted free agency at that point? Let's see if this guy gets actually better. The language, I hate the way Shams reports it as just like a 5-year deal that could be worth $270 million. Give the actual number what it is. I don't care about the language because if he does make an All-NBA team, you're going to be happy to pay that difference. I talked about this in a previous podcast. I guess I was prepared for them to extend him, but it happened so quickly. They viewed it as a no-brainer after the season he had. And I'm very curious to see if and where Jalen Suggs' number kind of ends up here. But if those are my secondary kind of thoughts on the Magic, is a team that I'm endlessly fascinated with at the moment. I don't know that they've made the most of their cap space. I think they've made good moves, but I don't know that they're good moves that really get them any closer to their ceiling. They might improve incrementally based off internal development and just infusing KCP into the rotation as replacing minutes from Joe Ingles and Markelle Fultz at this point as of now, but just sort of running it back. They're still loaded for a trade. And so I would still love Simons on this team. This is a team that, I mean, you can get there if you're willing to include Cole Anthony. I don't know if when he only has 1 year left on his deal, I'm talking about Malcolm Brogdon, that could be someone that you just take a look at. You could still get to the money there for him. You could aim higher. Like, let's just get LaMelo Ball onto the Orlando. If you think that he's going to remain healthy. So their offseason is one, I mentioned this during their section. I wish I would have spent more time on it. Their offseason is one that I'm conflicted on because I don't hate it, but I was so ready to love it after they got KCP. And now I'm just sort of like, okay, meh, what's sort of going on here? None of these moves are indefensible. I would have waited on Franz personally. But I don't know if this makes it, and I guess the thing they did this offseason, I would say it makes it more likely to extend Jalen Suggs. I'd be very curious to see what his number winds up coming in at, because I really do think to maximize Franz and even, Jalen Suggs, Paolo, like you need at least one other caps lock, and they don't have a caps lock shooter. Right? Maybe that becomes Jet Howard. Is that what they're betting on next year? This team is really, really, really good and deep, but like they're a team where they need that offensive. And if it's not going to be a caps lock shooter, then certainly just a better offensive organizer than having to turn to Jalen Suggs and Cole Anthony and Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner and saying, okay, we're just going to sort of put together this floor general by committee. I think that can work in certain instances. And I'm high enough on Jalen Suggs and Paolo Banchero specifically that I'm open to it. But then like that's when you need to go get the caps lock shooter, which they have yet to do. So really good team. Was expecting and hoping more from them this offseason. The offseason or the free agency period is like a week old. So there's still time for them to do stuff. And I'm hoping that they will continue to do. That's right. It's, I guess, a version of stat padding, but it's by myself. So I'm going to try something out, and hat tip to Discord user Be Rich for suggesting that we do something where maybe we react to viral clips or videos. Those get a little bit hard to do during the off season. So I'm going to talk about, or I'm going to react to Skip Bayless talking about LeBron James, Bronny James, the Lakers. Someone sent, there were 2 videos. They sent one of them in Discord, and just based off the way it was promoted, that Bronny James is more clutch. Is it clutcher? I asked my editors about this. No one answered me. I think it's more clutch. I don't think clutcher is a word, but he called Bronny James more clutch, or has more of a clutch gene than LeBron. I have not watched these. So the whole point is to just react off the cuff. I'm not trying to give them, we're just putting them on the show, not trying to give them super shine where I'm necessarily bumping it. But it's all jokes, nothing personal here. They're going to be bad jokes because I'm doing this off the cuff. It's supposed to be unplanned. I think if we were going to do a deeper dive into a clip, like a viral play or something going around, yeah, you watch that a bunch and try and whatever. But if we're reacting to opinions, just something to try out. Hopefully everybody enjoys it. Hopefully we'll see if I even enjoy it, because I cannot stand listening to Skip Bayless. But again, nothing personal. All jokes here. It's just jokes, good natured fun. We're going to be off and running here. Hopefully this translates somewhat to audio. I'd probably recommend, I don't know, watching it on YouTube. So let's play. It's 2 clips. They're each like, I think 2 minutes long. Let's just see what we got going here.
Bronny.
Okay, first, right off the bat, I'm sorry to interject. I don't watch the Skip Bayless show. This is my first exposure to it. Is this always what he wears? Like, he's got a black shirt, plain black shirt with a gold chain. It kind of looks like he's trying to recreate that rock. Like, does he have a fanny pack on beneath that picture? But that's not a turtleneck. So I don't, what did we do? Like the gold chain and the plain black shirt. It's like, looks like Meek Mill maybe trying to be the Rock here. I don't know. This is just right off the bat, I'm already turned off.
Signed, sealed, and delivered.
The other thing too is I'm not going to criticize. I hate criticizing appearances, but as someone who was most recently called, what was it in the comments? Looks like an AI Disney character, an AI generated Disney character. I feel like I'm allowed to say this. He kind of looks like, I don't know, like, can we pick I've been tanning before, full disclosure, but like, can we pick how aggressive you want to be with it? Like right now, he kind of looks like Ted Danson decided to get a dye job and then go tanning exclusively in beds that have like year-old bulbs, or maybe Planet Fitness bulbs at this point. I don't really know what he's trying to do here, but I don't like that. And he just looks so miserable at this point. You get paid a bunch of money to give bad sports takes for a living. Be happier, my guy.
Delivered now with the Lakers. He's on a guaranteed Laker contract. There's no G League involved here.
Oh boy. Okay. Inaccuracy right off the bat. So it is a guaranteed deal. The 4th year for Bronny James's contract is a team option. There's going to be, the G League is involved. They already, I think, came out and said, JJ Redick, I believe, that the plan is for him to spend a ton of time with the Lakers G League affiliate. So they was at the Erie Bay Lakers still. So there is G League involved, which is exactly what you want to happen for someone drafted towards the end of the 2nd round. Even just like 1st round picks being in the G League, if there isn't, you're dealing with on a team that has title aspirations. I don't know if the Lakers should really have those aspirations, but there's going to be some G League minutes involved here.
He's going to be on the Laker roster, as I said, from day one, and he's going to play.
Okay, so, looks like you might be need to finishing a thought here. Yes, he's going to be on the Lakers roster. You're right on that, Skip. He is not, what is the over-under on the number of games, real Laker games that Bronny plays in? I would assume they're only going to be like massive blowouts, and maybe we have the sort of fanfare of, we need to see Bron and Bronny on the court together. But I will set the over under the number of NBA games, or let's do total minutes. If you're giving me 500 minutes, I'm going to take the under.
Fairly significant minutes fairly quickly. I don't know how many that'll be, and I am
again, no. If he's playing fairly significant minutes fairly quickly, I don't know what the Lakers are doing. And this is just like, I want to know where he's going with this point, because this was never the intention to draft Bronny to have him play a bunch of minutes. And I think JJ Redick made that clear when they were talking about getting him into their player development program.
I'm a Bronny fan. In fact, I think Bronny is built even tougher than his father is, because Bronny's been through a lot in his life.
Whoa, oh my God, this is idiotic. I know you probably get paid to be this caricature of an actual sports analyst, but I will not diminish what Bronny went through. I think one that gets underplayed is the attention in the social media age, and also having LeBron as your father. Mir Vader wrote an incredible piece of The Ringer called The Weight and Weight of Bronny. You talk about that incredible title of Bronny James. There's that pressure that I don't think anyone necessarily can relate to. And you have to deal with that. This is a young kid. And then he had that cardiac arrest episode last summer. And that's ridiculously tough to come back from. You're going to sit here and tell me that he has been through more than LeBron James, who during his adolescence, from what, like, just based off stuff that we've read, was couch surfing at one point with his mom, didn't have a permanent home, was living with coaches. There was concerns about how unsupervised he was at one point. But Bronny James has been through more. This is just, now I'm at a point where I'm not criticizing Bronny James here, but like, he has had a level of safety that LeBron James was basically never insured while he was growing up. And this is just such a blasphemous comment to make. I mean, the cardiac arrest thing with Bronny James, that is scary as hell. I can't imagine what that was like for Savannah and LeBron to have to see your kid go through something that you're just not supposed to see someone in their youth go through, adolescence go through. But like, he's been through more than LeBron James. Like, oh, and even if you want to talk about, you want to throw off-court stuff out of the equation, coming in as this highly touted prospect, but like where your safety net wasn't, like, if at the end of the day, like if Bronny doesn't pan out, he is now signed, and LeBron would have signed a massive contract too, but like there's generational wealth set up for him. I'm not saying he couldn't get another job, work really hard. I'm not saying he won't even be a good NBA player, but there's just like a fail safe there for him that wasn't there for LeBron. So this is just like, my God, let's see if I even make it through this entire clip.
In the harshest spotlight any kid could ever be thrust into as LeBron James Jr.
Fair in terms of spotlight, but what's tougher to deal with? Spotlight, or maybe not knowing where your next meal or is coming from, or where you're going to sleep that night, that week, where you're going to be living the next year? What's tougher to deal with? Skip, I'm asking you.
I love how Bronny's handled this. I get a good feeling every time I watch him not only play basketball, but just handle himself, carry himself.
That is one. I want to know how much of Bronny James playing basketball Skip Bayless has watched. So we set Bronny James's rookie minutes over under at 500. I'm going to go over under 5 minutes that Skip has sat down and watched even Bronny James highlights. I'm going to smash that under. And also, if he's watching Bronny James handle himself, this is just...
Kid's got a backbone. Kid's got guts. Kid's got principle and character. His parents did a good job raising him.
Hell yeah. I respect it. We got to give credit where credit is due. We tend to lionize these athletes when you don't know them personally. And there's a lot of performative jokes made at LeBron's expense, and many of them are just hilarious. I will say, even if you cringe at some of the stuff he does say, or maybe some of the social media posts that he has, it does seem, and I'm not saying that other NBA players aren't. I think people went after Jason Tatum for the comments he made about having a kid, how he initially didn't want Deuce when he was younger. I mean, he was, what is he? Jason Tatum was 19 now, so he carried the 2 years. So he's 19 then, and having a kid, like, that's something that you have to reconcile with. But LeBron James does seem like a good parent or involved dad, and that's just the view from afar. So it's really cool to see people recognize that part of LeBron. And like, for even someone like Skip to say that, I fave that. I fave that part of this.
I think he'll be more calm, cool, and collected in the eye of next year's storm than even his father will be.
That's probably because he will be playing in the G League, and LeBron will be trying to win actual NBA basketball games as the best player on his team and one of the best players of all time. But carry on.
I think he'll play pretty well alongside his father, but it is going to be circus material because you have a first-time head coach trying to juggle minutes with Bronny and proven veterans who are not going to love it when Bronny gets his 12 minutes, 14 minutes and 16 minutes and maybe.
That is actually a good point and semi-interesting. I push back on the proven veteran aspect of this. Yeah, a lot of these veterans have just proven that they shouldn't be guaranteed minutes. I mean, you look at this Laker roster, and if everyone's healthy, okay, yeah, LeBron, Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves. Who is Bronny playing in front of those guys? None. So now you get into the Gabe Vincent, Jared Vanderbilt. Yeah, better track records. Neither of, I guess Gabe Vincent might play Bronny's position. Jared Vanderbilt's immaterial. Bronny's not going to take minutes from him. Jalen Hood-Schifino, I mean, are we going to worry about, I guess, Max Christie? That's the reason they hired JJ Redick, was to develop Max Christie. So I am interested to see how they kind of juggle that. But what makes it a circus is because it's LeBron, and it's because places like, who skips on Fox Sports? Is the Skip Bayless show on Fox Sports? Again, my first exposure to the Skip Bayless show, and I can't take my eyes off this gold chain. I just honestly can't. Like, this looks like, my God, looks like Eric Roberts forgot that he was Eric Roberts right now. I just don't understand the outfit. Maybe I need to check out other Skip Bayless show clips, but I am interested to see how JJ Redick handles that dynamic as a first-time head coach, and also just the framing that he's LeBron James's podcast co-host. Those aren't his credentials, but they have that relationship built in there. So not, as far as Skip Bayless takes go, that one was okay.
Maybe even some nights 20 minutes a game playing alongside, if not in place of, his father.
I really want to see the Lakers sub out LeBron for Bronny, but I want to see them do it spitefully. I want JJ Redick to have a game plan in place or wanted a certain play run, and LeBron doesn't, and then he just gets benched for his kid. How funny would that be? I'd be with it.
I think Bronny will be pretty good. I think he'll become a clutch three-point shooter. I've always gotten the feeling that Bronny had a bigger clutch gene than his father does.
Based off what? I literally just pulled my microphone out of its stand. What is this man talking about? This is going to ruin the rest of the clip because I got way too over exuberant here. Based on what? Like, what is it? He has the more clutch? Is it maybe because he learned to drive on a standard car and LeBron only does self-driving cars or gets chauffeured around? I don't, honestly, what makes Bronny more clutch than LeBron? What? I need the evidence. What is it?
McDonald's game, he was in the spotlight, and they went to him late 2 or 3 times, and he just nailed threes. He did not shoot the three well at USC, but I'm giving him a complete and utter break because I'm knocking on wood for him. He had a serious heart condition.
He did and does have a serious heart condition, but I don't know that 2 or 3 plays in a McDonald's game makes you more clutch than one of who's like perhaps the greatest NBA player of all time, who's always been a playmaker first. And there's a narrative that he's always passing out of drives or out of situations in crunch time. Being too deferential has always been overblown. Just pretty mind-melting stuff here.
That waylaid him to start his first year of college basketball at USC, and it just never quite got going. And I get it. And that team never quite got going around Isaiah Collier, who I thought was going to be the first pick in the draft, and he fell all the way to the bottom of the first round. I'm throwing all that out because I think that Bronny, at only 6'1.5", will become a very credible, if not difference-making, on-ball defender. I think that.
Okay. I'm trying to think. Yeah, you could be 6'1" and be a credible on-ball defender. Tying that into his shooting and his clutch gene, certainly interesting. I want like more evidence as to why Skip thinks this.
That body of his, which already looks pretty good to me, will become more.
That's a good point. I mean, this dude looks like LeBron. I mean, this might have something to do with the resources available to him, but Bronny looks kind of like chiseled and built in a way that even LeBron didn't seem like coming in, where he was even still had that young, stringy look to him. But I think it's also, what is LeBron? 6'8", 6'9". And so if Bronny's 6'1", 6'2", around that area, a little bit easier to fill out there.
More and more of a man body. So I like what Bronny will bring, except it's going to be very difficult on JJ Redick to juggle minutes and egos down the bench. Bronny.
Yeah, I would agree with that point from Skip, that it's going to be hard to juggle those egos, but we're operating under the assumption that there's going to be pressure on him to play Bronny. in NBA minutes. And I think if he's getting run in the G League, that's and playing with the actual Lakers in practice, and maybe he earns minutes that way. I don't think like if it gets to a point where the Lakers are just playing Bronny over some of these veterans, like if he's taking Austin Reeves' minutes and he sucks, then yeah. But I feel like we're manufacturing a lot here because his name is Bronny James and he's on the team with his dad. So I can't bring myself to worry about that. The circus is going to come from all of us, including ourselves that are covering this, and Skip, who's really going to milk it. So this next clip here, I think is it was promoted as Skip Bayless talking about why the Lakers no longer have the cachet to get players. That might actually be super interesting. So let's go see what he has to say on this matter.
There are 4 key pieces to that puzzle last year who were not healthy, and yet and still, they're right there in the fourth quarter of Game 1 at Denver, first round of the playoffs, and LeBron pouts and won't shoot until the...
Oh my God. This anti-LeBron narrative, just so tired. And again, I'm being part of the problem by I always tell people that seem to actually get aggrieved by it. It's fine to dunk on them if you want to have fun. That's what I'm trying to do here. But to actually get mad about this take because it's just so cartoonish at this point, and it's coming from someone that looks like they're using Donald Trump's skincare regime, whatever you want to call it, that I can't take it seriously. Like LeBron has pouted, LeBron like refusing to shoot. Let's just come on here. Settle down, Skip. Again, I know that you've done a lot of Bronny James film work. I question how much LeBron James film work you've done.
The game's out of hand. Game 2 at Denver, the whole series could have been turned on its head. LeBron gets a wide open free throw of a 3-point shot to win the game, seconds left, and he missed it. As simple as that.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like there needs to be bigger penalties every time an NBA player misses a shot. Like, should we have taken away LeBron's firstborn, or should we have just executed LeBron on the spot for missing a shot? They're really just missing a shot. Michael Jordan never missed a shot. So, I mean, anyone who played for the Dallas Cowboys has never dropped a pass. So there needs to be, Skip's right. We need harsher punishments in place for these dudes who can't shoot 100% from the field, even when they're just totally wide open and playing in front of tens of thousands of people and like against a team where there might be I don't even remember the play he's talking about, but there might have been someone closing out and running after him, but you need to be perfect. Yeah. The fact that LeBron missed that shot, Jordan wouldn't have missed that shot. He would take it with one hand and his eyes closed and waited for a defender to come out to him so that he could have shot it contested.
But that team, coached by Darvin Ham, who's doing a pretty good job to me, was right there.
I mean, I tend to give coaches most of the time the benefit of the doubt just because they forget more about basketball on a daily basis than I will ever know. I think some of the lineups that Darvin Ham would perpetually run were definitely worth criticizing. I think that the offense in general, too, for the Lakers was not inventive enough. That might be a symptom of having LeBron James. But do I think that he needed to be scapegoated? I mean, let's see how JJ Redick does before we answer that question, I suppose. So, do you see anyone who's watching the like dramatic? Should I add that into like my podcasting repertoire, where it's just staring at the ground and just shaking my head solemnly, like really just adding dramatic? Because he looks like he's really about to uncork a take here. I'm gonna be upset if the buildup isn't worth the return.
I keep hearing Laker entitlement of, well, let's just go get DeJounte Murray, and it came down to Atlanta saying no. We want Austin Reeves. You got to throw Austin Reeves into whatever the deal was. Probably Rui was in there, maybe D'Lo's. I don't know, but they want.
I don't know. We know that the Lakers didn't want to give up Austin Reeves, and I think in the DeJounte Murray deal specifically, you probably have a case to do that because, like, if it was Reeves and 2 firsts versus the Pelicans gave up Dyson Daniels and 2 firsts, the Lakers' own picks are going to be more valuable than the picks that the Pelicans are giving up, so to speak. So I kind of understand that stance, and we don't have reporting right now on how seriously the Lakers were in on DeJounte. It seems like they're more interested in cashing in on maybe a bigger name, or did this come down to they wouldn't include Dalton Connect? It also just seems like, honestly, I know that they could use some secondary playmaking now, or Reeves would have definitely worked for them. It seems like the Hawks wanted to prioritize getting some wing bodies in there and wing defenders. The Lakers don't have those guys to offer. So could they have beaten Atlanta's offer? Sure. this is not the player where if you could have gotten him, then I'm going to criticize you for not. I think part of the appeal would have been, all right, if you would put every pick, 2 picks and 2 swaps on the table and could have gotten him, and now you're keeping Austin Reeves and you have LeBron and AD and Bronny James playing his like 18, 19 minutes a game, sure, but we haven't seen enough reporting on it. I don't think this is one of the opportunities that the Lakers necessarily just whiffed on.
Wanted Austin Reeves. And I was with the Lakers for saying no, because DeJounte's not that good. I like him, but I don't love him.
I guess I agree with everything. I didn't know this was going to go on for him to compliment the Lakers, though. So I make some roundabout points, and I think people listening or watching will have no idea where they're going. But this is, I don't know where this is going, guys.
Austin Reeves is really, really good, and he's only going to get really, really better.
I mean, I don't really know that we could say really, really better is proper English, but aside from that, we're framing this as Austin Reeves as one of the young Lakers they want to build around. He's not old. I'm older than Austin Reeves. So it's fucking ridiculous that I'm saying this. He's 26. Like, this is not like, how much better do we expect him to get at 20? Do you think he's going to turn into building block material?
And then I kept hearing about Donovan Mitchell. Let's just snap our fingers and go, let's trade for Donovan Mitchell. And I said, Cleveland's not going to give him up. And Cleveland just maxed him out. And he is now, for the next, whatever it is, 5 years, a Cleveland Cavalier.
He is a Cleveland Cavalier for technically the next 4, but 3 of those were guaranteed. And the way that free agency works is if he wants to leave, we'll be talking about this again in 2 years. But he is right. They gave him a max extension, and he is still in Cleveland. And I think if you were ever setting the Lakers were putting their eggs, and then we'll just go out and trade for Donovan Mitchell or Trae Young basket. Yeah, you shouldn't have done that.
DeJounte obviously went to New Orleans.
Great take by Skip. I'm pretty sure that DeJounte is in New Orleans. That's great. Good call.
Clay, let's go get Clay. And now on the front burner becomes DeMar DeRozan. We'll see how that works out.
Ooh, it's not going to. Right now, it looks like DeMar DeRozan's going to the Kings. We know Clay he could have had 4-80 from the Lakers versus 3-50 from the Mavs. I think what goes into that, I guess the Lakers could have guaranteed him a starting spot, but to Skip's point, like, the Lakers being a circus might have worked against them there. And he's playing, Michael Thompson, his dad. And then just the air of like the pressure there. Did he want to go in Dallas where, okay, you're guaranteed the starting spot. There might just be less of a media hoopla. And then I think the more important thing here is the money's comparable enough. The playing time is comparable, if not better enough, that why not just go to the better team, which would be the Dallas Mavericks.
My point is,
he has a point. This is exciting.
In the end, something just happened. A message just got sent that the Lakers are no longer the destination.
Right. Because they didn't get Klay Thompson. Sure. And because players who are under contract didn't force their way there. I'm not really sure where we're going here. And there's only like a couple seconds of this clip left.
Maybe they're no longer in the eyes of players around the league, the Lakers anymore, because LeBron has become,
oh God, I don't even want to let him finish the sentence, but I'm gonna,
more trouble than he's worth running the Lakers with now his puppet head coach, JJ Redick.
Okay. This is just like, LeBron is definitely, him and Clutch Sports have gone to great lengths to say like they aren't involved in these decisions, which I do think is bullshit. And I think that you can lay, if you want to, some of the blame for the Russell Westbrook trade, which might be the original Cardinal sin, although I think you look at the Danny Green trade as well. A job of a front office is to keep stars in check and to, if you want their input, solicit it, do it. But you also need to shoot them down when they're wrong. And so I only assign so much blame as what has gone wrong in LA. I don't think LeBron has sat there and completely devalued the presence of two-way players. That would be, he's too smart for them to do that. Does he maybe want ultimate power and control and they've given him too much? I honestly can't speak to that. But to say that LeBron is more trouble than he's worth, LeBron was still one of the 15 best players in basketball last year. And so I want to know specifically what he has done to ruin the Lakers. And if it's the whole him and Bronny or just the attention that comes with being in Los Angeles has prevented some other players from wanting to be there, I'd like to hear more about it on the record. But like Anthony Davis forced a trade to only the Lakers. And there's always going to be that cachet. Is there Lakers exceptionalism? Will some teams charge a Lakers tax? Are they overvaluing some of their own players if they don't want to give up Austin Reeves in some of these deals for targets that we haven't even mentioned or heard about yet? Okay, sure. But this idea that LeBron has ruined the Lakers when he is still very clearly, and I don't think he's the reason that it's this way. Like, yeah, I guess his style could be harder to incorporate, but I've never how do you watch this guy play and think that he's still not great enough to be, well, like, we still kind of need to flesh out like our roster in future and take his opinion into account.
LeBron is now effectively the unofficial head coach of the Lakers.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. This is just utter BS. I think that we can just, we can just leave it there because yes, okay, JJ Redick is LeBron's homie, but JJ Redick was not only interviewed by the Lakers. He had interviews with the Raptors, the Hornets. Wasn't there another organization that he had interviewed with a while back? So he's had at least 2 other NBA interviews. So this has been a name that's at least been floated, whether the interviews were out of courtesy or not. He's a name that's been floated. And the other thing here is just like, unless the Lakers did this on purpose to make it look like they weren't bending to LeBron's will, they went after Dan Hurley first and offered him money in just one of the dumbest public negotiations. I have no idea what they were thinking on that. I've likened it to, you don't propose marriage to someone without knowing the answer. There are just certain questions you don't ask without knowing the answer. And the way those negotiations unfolded with the money and the years they offered him would be one of those situations. And so was this sort of an elaborate plan to make it seem like, oh, we're not going the LeBron's will be done route? Spare me that. LeBron is not the head coach of the Lakers. This was, as promised, it took him forever to get there, but blaming LeBron for the state of the Lakers is quite the take here. Not perfect. He's definitely made some missteps along the way, but everything that's wrong with them can be laid at the feet of ownership and the front office, because even if they solicited his advice or listened to them, part of their jobs is understanding when not to do that. Hopefully you just didn't hate that. We'll still work out some Kings for it. There'll be different types of clips that we go through. If you'd like to submit one that you'd like to see me or maybe Grant together review, you do that via Discord or our email. We do have a trade to report, though, at the end of this, a big one. So everybody sit down. The Spurs are trading guard Devonte Graham and a second-round pick to the Charlotte Hornets per Woj. The Hornets will waive Graham, allowing him to become a free agent. The Hornets are going to have to pay the partial guarantee that was on Graham's number, which is like 2.85 million. They're going to get a second-round pick out of the deal. And the Spurs are now $25 million plus under the cap. I think at this point, $26 million plus. So they are set up to do some spicy things. Maybe that helps them out in a Lowry market and trade, or trade for someone else. Who knows? Hope you enjoyed this. We'll be coming at you with, I think, more frequent episodes in the following week. We only had 2 this week. We apologize after putting out like 8 or 10 in the previous week or whatever. Please remember, if you're watching this far, subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the whole 9. Join our Discord. The link to that's in the podcast and YouTube description. Be on the lookout for our latest merch drop, which will be coming soon. The designs are in. I have samples on the way. This is exciting. They kick some ass. So be on the lookout for that. Until next time, and as always, leave the shout out to one, the only, the indelible, the legend, Frank Ntilikina.